This is Martin Giles of the Guildford Dragon News, and I'm pleased to welcome Councillor James Walsh of the Labour Group at Guildford Borough Council. Hello, James. Welcome to the Dragon.
Thanks for inviting me.
You're very welcome. And let's get straight into it then. So when you're in the Labour Group at Guildford Borough Council, as I said, when did you first decide to join the Labour Party and why?
I joined in '97 after the election, and I've been meaning to join for years, but I was just basically a lazy student. As a sixth form, I was more interested in girls and all the other stuff. But I always wanted to be a member of the Labour Party. My grandfather was a councillor in Egham up in North Surrey for 30 years. And I always had lots of stories, and I saw people come and speak to him and thank him for getting a council house and all this kind of thing. He's a very unassuming man. And I took a lot of inspiration from him as a young boy. My great-granddad on the other side of the family was Irish, and he was an Irish socialist, one of the few that were literate in his area of Waterford. And he used to get campaigns to get people's rents down and that kind of thing. And again, those sort of stories percolated through to me and kind of gave me that kind of impetus. And the sort of thing that really drew it all together in the 80s was the Ethiopian famine in 1984. I was 8, I think, when that was on TV, and that really hit. You know, I remember thinking as an 8-year-old, this is just not fair. What's going on? And the
Michael Burke's reports. Michael Burke's reports on the BBC.
That's right. Yeah. Even now, you watch that and it brings tears to your eyes.
Yeah. Okay, so that was the motivation, and then you became a councillor in Slough before moving to Guildford. You told me because your wife was from Guildford, and that's why you moved here.
Yeah, so I met my wife Amber 2010, I think it was. Obviously, the relationship developed, and we got married. And I moved here just before we got married into Guildford. I grew up in Surrey, in Egham, so I knew Guildford and Woking. You know, Surrey's in my blood, really. Right. And I've always liked Guildford as a place, so it all came together really, and moving here was a bit of a dream.
Oh, good. Okay.
I love the town, I love the borough, and it's a pleasure to be here, basically.
Right. So then you got involved in local politics here, and you were elected in was it 2015?
16, I think, the by-election.
A by-election. Sorry, yes, 2016. Okay, so you've got some experience as a councillor. What do you say to those who feel that national party politics can have a malign influence on local politics?
I understand that perspective from people. You sort of see the ding-dong in Parliament. It's quite unedifying. And the older I get, the less sort of tribal I get with that kind of thing. I'm much more about collegiate working with people from different parties. Take the people first and the politics second. You have your disagreements, you have your campaigns, but you should never get that kind of person. I think the national stuff, for a lot of people, they see that's what they see in politics. They see the ding dong. I think it can be positive. You know, in Slough, I was on the leading group. I was a Labour councillor. I was on the cabinet. We had a Labour MP, and we had Labour government for the first 2-3 years when I was on the council. So we had access to ministers. So when there are issues in the Slough that we needed help with, we'd go straight to ministers or the MP and get that kind of help. I think that's the same in Guildford. When the Conservatives are in control, they have a lot of meetings with ministers. They still do. So that's a valuable thing, I think. It's just about being open with the other councillors on the councils, let them know what you're doing and try and feed that in, that kind of collegiate working again. So I think there can be a positive as well as that negative side to it.
But do you accept there is a negative side? I mean, sometimes when I've watched the council at work at Millmead, you can sense that there are party lines being followed. Not perhaps so much with your group. I don't mean to be insulting, but you know, you're a 2-member group. But you do see it sometimes in the Conservative group and the Lib Dems, don't you think?
You do, but part of that's about the competition of politics. I mean, the Conservatives, you know, let's be honest, they're going to be the ones who take control of the council again if anyone's going to take control of the residents' groups and Lib Dems. So there's that tension there where they have to kind of delineate themselves against the opposition. And you do get politics. As long as that's kept reasonable and the personalities are kept out of it, I don't mind that so much, the ding-dong. It's honest. As long as it's honest, then that's fine. But I don't think it gets in the way of actually what happens in Guildford. And I think behind the scenes, councillors kind of generally get on. What you don't see in the chambers, the emails and talking and getting on with each other, by and large.
Okay. But your relations with the Conservatives at GBC seem better than those that you have with the Lib Dems. Do you think is that true? Is that true? Do you think? And if it is, why is that?
I don't think so. I think we're both opposition parties, and Andrew and I are a party of two, so we kind of got to play. We've got to play with all the players in the council, as it were. The Conservatives are sort of the main opposition. Sometimes they'll do things we agree with, sometimes they don't, and we kind of work on that. I've got a good relationship with Julia McShane. We had a good conversation recently about issues in Westborough. So no, I think just speaking personally, we kind of generally work with everyone.
Okay. Well, it's good to hear that. I think it's good to hear that you've got those communications going on, because there must be a lot of commonality between the cases you get and that exist in Westborough. So, what in your case, though, what is the most frequent type of case?
As I said earlier, we sort of spoke offline. The issues that you get in Stoke tend to be more personal. So issues like, in terms of, I've got to be careful about not revealing.
Of course, yeah.
There was a mother and father had a vulnerable son during COVID, and there's a whole issue about him not being able to live at the house and being isolated. It caused a lot of emotional, mental health problems. And I managed to sort it out by getting in touch with the housing team, and some great officers on that housing team that got him a house near to the family. And they were so, just hearing them on the phone afterwards, how relieved and pleased they were.
Yeah,
that's what it's about for me. And that it's those kind of issues you get in Stoke a little bit. The sort of those things where people don't want to speak out about their issues until you knock on their door and you actually see it. For example, where this was really major was over in Slough. Actually, I knocked on somebody's door canvassing, and he was on his knees. He walked on his knees to open a door, and he's basically disabled and had no facilities in his house to help him get around the house, which is bloody outrageous. I got on top of that and we sorted it out for him. But there's a lot of this hidden stuff that goes on in places like Stoke and in Westborough and in my old ward, where you just have to go and find it and help people. They don't always ask for help, and it's needed. It's pride. Part of it is they don't know that they can ask council, and the council can sometimes do something.
So, by the sound of it, it must be quite heartbreaking actually sometimes to see those cases, but I guess also very satisfying when you can do something about it.
That's what it's about for me. It really is. I sort of got into politics. I'm a historian by trade, did history at university. I'm very much into the kings and queens, the leading politicians, or the interest of power, that kind of thing. And that kind of drove a little bit of the politics, getting interested in that. But really, it's about people. When you see people and they've got issues and you can help them, you can do something. There's nothing better than that. There's plenty of cases I've had where I thought, Christ, I can't help these people. What am I going to do? I've thought about it, worked with different people, and sometimes it is working with other councillors as well. Paul Spooner, what would you do? Julia, what would you do? And getting that result for people. The bottom line is getting the result for people. Outside that, you've got election time where you do all the party politics and you get your votes, and that's important. But the bottom line is helping people where you can. An example of that is actually in Stoke was the traveller incursions on the Green. I did a canvas around there once, and the stories I heard from people that experienced what had gone on there was appalling. And as a result of that, I managed to get the Green protected from illegal driving and illegal encampments. And it's just, it's things like that come up. But the main things are those personal issues. That's what comes up a lot in Stoke.
Right. Okay. So what about the most pressing issues facing Guildford generally, do you think? What if you had to choose one or two, what would they be?
There's a few. The town centre. I was there today, actually, in the top end of the high street up near Oxfam, up that end. The amount of empty properties up there, the empty properties in the high street itself. Guildford's looking quite sorry for itself in some places, the high street, and it needn't do that. It's got a lot of good independent shops, and there's a lot of scope for more independent shops and doing things differently, put housing in the town centre. And I think the will is there to do that, but there's barriers, things like high rents, trying to attract those businesses and retain them. I think that's a big issue we need to sort of get on top of over the next few years as we sort of hopefully come into some kind of new normality. What's that going to mean for the road set network around here?
So just picking out that issue about high rents, why is it that these rents aren't coming down? Because you would think market forces would be driving them down. Why are landlords resistant?
I don't know. Looking at the top end of the high street, some of the other shops, some of those at Maplin or Giraffe or the old was it Shooting Star charity shop, they've been empty for ages, a long time. I'm wondering if people are sitting on them waiting for either high-end business to come in or waiting. I saw this especially in Egham, up that area, the North Surrey. A lot of those places were kind of left to rot, rack and ruin for months and years until eventually, it's easy for the landlord to sell them or to get money from the council to do them up. I don't know. I'm not saying that's what's happening, but
well, our reporter Hugh Coakley, he's looked at this and he says that sometimes it's because they're owned by, big insurance companies or pension portfolios, and really they don't care about, they can easily bear the cost of a empty property, and they're keen on maintaining the market value overall.
Yeah.
So maybe that's one of the reasons, but obviously not much a local council can do about that.
No, but it's something we need to really seriously look at. Because you look at Woking, I mean, there's a sort of feeling that Woking's on the up. I'm not sure if it is, but there's a feeling it is. And I think that'd be at the expense of Guildford. Bracknell, for example, the huge, was it £60 million, £60 billion, £60 million shopping centre refurbishment in the middle of Bracknell. All these places are sort of picking themselves up and doing something different. We're kind of, we've got so much to build on, the heritage, all the things we can do in Guildford. We just need to get up and do it.
Okay, well, interesting. So we'll watch what you may say about that in the chamber or elsewhere. Now, you voted for the adoption of the controversial local plan. Are you still glad you did?
Yeah, I think so. It's controversial in a lot of Guildford, but in other parts of Guildford, you barely hear a whisper of it. You don't hear anything about it in Stoke and Westborough, the type of canvas. You don't hear anything about it. And if you do hear about it, it's in the context of housing. Right. There's what, 2,500 people on the housing list?
Yeah.
5,000. There's a lot of people on the list.
Yeah.
And housing been built over the last 30, 40 years. So I think there's a strong argument for more housing in the borough. The question is where you do that.
Yeah.
Brownfield is obviously the first option. But do we really want to see brownfield development in Guildford Town Centre where you're going to have 10-storey blocks of flats like in Woking? So I think there's a balance between that brownfield stuff in the town centre and a bit more in the villages, the infilling and things, and protecting the greenbelt wherever we can. But people need houses. The broader problem, which is a government level issue, is we need to take the heat out of the southeast. We need to expand the economy across the country. The way we're working now, I'm working here from home with my computer. People can work from Scotland, from the Isle of Bute or wherever, have a job in London. That can be done now. So I think we seriously need to look at doing that. Because in the 25 years I've been an adult, or a bit more than that, I can feel the change. In the last 25 years, the change, the more people on the streets, living rough, more people on the roads, busy. Honestly, it's so hectic and busy around here. You can just feel it's overheating.
But it's understandable, isn't it, that people want to protect greenbelt that's near them?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I'm the same. I live in Shalford. It's lovely around here, but there's also a lot of people, like people who live in Stoke and Westborough, where their children are growing up, and they have to find somewhere to live far away from home. These areas, especially my ward, there's people living there that've been there 60 years since the estate was built, and they've got their children living there, the grandchildren living there, and the great grandchildren are now thinking, how the hell am I going to get a house? There's nowhere to live. And that's the issue. You need people as well as the people that are going to come into Guildford, which is also a necessary thing. But the people that live here and the families and the communities, we need houses for them.
But isn't it social housing?
Yeah.
It's housing. Because any private housing is likely to be expensive, isn't it? And maybe out of reach of the people you're talking about.
You mean St Mary's Wharf?
St Mary's Wharf. Well, yeah, I guess so. But I mean, any private development is going to be subject to market forces. And we all know the average prices of properties around here. Not that we benefit from it particularly, unless we're selling and moving elsewhere, but we know it's high. So it's very difficult for young people to get on the ladder, much difficult than it was for us. But social housing is at least one way, probably maybe the best way for people that have limited means to get a house of their own.
But that requires a bit.
We're not building many though.
No, and the proposal for St Mary's Wharf, I think, was at 40 luxury flats there. Why not have even 35 and then 5 social flats there? There's a whole kind of. It's a big proposal. It's
what we've been told, we did run an article on that, and we've been told that the allocation has not yet been settled. So we've been told it's not settled, that there won't be any.
Yeah, it's not. Nothing's decided yet. I think David Burway or somebody said it in one of the previous interviews, but it's been mooted out there. It's out there. It's out there. It might not be viable. You sort of lay the ground, manage expectations, and sort of our position is. There should be affordable housing wherever. It shouldn't just be thrown in an estate somewhere in the middle of town. Why can't people who on limited means live in a nice area? Have the houses there. The houses don't have to be the stereotype housing that people are worried about. There's a lot of stigma around this, which is just unacceptable, really.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's a very attractive social housing development in St Catherine's, where I live. And the site agent, I mean, it's been there some years now. The site agent told me at the time that he could have sold them about 3 times over to private inquirers. So I agree with you personally that mixing it up is a good idea.
No, it gives diversity to the area as well. You have like people mixing different people. I grew up in an estate in Enfield Green, a council estate, and I very much have it imbued in me that I was James Walsh from that estate. You know, don't play with him. From friends' parents on the other estate, the new estate, the Corby Drive estate. You know, I grew up with that, and that wasn't an estate like we see in London. And it's not the right way to go about things, and it's such an outmoded model. Let's mix things up. You know, treat people like people.
Okay, so do you intend to stand again now in 2023? And if you do, how many seats do you think your party can win then?
The ultimate decision with the local Labour Party. I'll put my name forward, and the decision will be made by members.
Okay.
In terms of new councillors and what we can win, I think we could possibly win Westborough. If we did the work and we got the candidates in place, I think Westborough's winnable. Again, it depends on the people. You've got to give the people an offer they can understand and accept. They've got to see you as a viable candidate. I think we've got the team to do that. We've got the people in the local Labour Party: Sue Hackman, Howard Smith, Brian Crease. Those people are really bringing an energy to the Labour Party that could sort of push us over the edge. I mean, it's a long, hard crawl, but we can do it. And I've seen it done before, like in Slough. Some of the work we did there, the seat I won off the Tory leader because of the work we did. So I've seen it's possible to do it, but you need to get in there, you need to speak to people and win them over.
Right, because I mean, Westborough used to be a Labour stronghold.
Yeah, it did.
Some years ago, but it was. And you would think it would be a natural hunting ground for Labour, which I know that you have tried there. But the Lib Dems seem quite well embedded there now, don't they?
It's like Scotland. You know, Scotland was a Labour heartland for donkey's years, wasn't it? It's when people took their eye off the ball a little bit. The sort of old faces died off. We had a lot of long-standing councillors there. Mrs. Bellaby, for example.
Yeah.
People passed away, and it's that kind of churn, and people moved into the area that didn't have the history of Westborough. And there's a lot you've got to keep up as a political party. You've got to keep up with the changes as well as the history. You know, some people that say, look at a council estate and go, oh, that should be all Labour. That's not the case. That is not the case anymore. And in some places, we see by the last election, it's the opposite. You know, the people up in the north voting Conservative for the first time. So those old certainties about politics have changed. And the only way to deal with that is to speak to everyone on an individual level, you know, speak to everyone rather than just assume that they're going to be Labour, they're going to be Lib Dem, they're going to be Tory. You've got to win it.
Well, I'll be watching the campaign, hopefully in Westborough in 2023 with some interest. It just occurred to me, actually, after saying that Lib Dems are well embedded there. Of course, it was Conservative not that long ago, or at least 2 of the seats were. So
we came close when I stood there in, what year was that? 2015, and we came quite close there. We, you know, not insurmountable.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll watch with interest. Councillor James Walsh, thank you very much for your time, and
thank you, Martin.
I hope to speak to you again soon.
And you take care.